Yo, how come no one has told me that there's an app that can help me leverage my existing subscriptions to Claude Code and ChatGPT so that my agents can actually talk to each other? On top of that, it could also save me tons of tokens because of how effective it is at managing context for my AI coding agents. Let me explain. So the app is called the Repo Prompt. And shout out to Eric Provencher. We are co-hosts on the Rate Limited podcasts. And he's actually the one who built this app. And what I want to do here is actually walk you through the setup really quick. And then we're going to run an example to see how these agents can actually hand off to each other. And if you've been kind of wiring this stuff up yourself, either using Pi agents or paying for multipliers on tokens like within Droid, or perhaps you're also just using Cursor or something where you're just in one chat and kind of using one model, then this is going to be something interesting that you're going to want to see. And so let's just go ahead and jump right in. So when you get started with Repo Prompt, it's going to show you a screen like this for the onboarding, and we're just going to go through the wizard. This just gives us some information as far as what Repo Prompt does. And so it does things like agent mode, has some NCPs it connects to. One of those things are like building features, code reviews, refactorings. And some of the other cool stuff are the token saving. So this is actually what Eric says himself. So don't get too stressed out. This is probably the most important step here as far as like the setup wizard. So let's go ahead and do that right now. As you can see, I only have the Codex CLI that's set up, and that's the most recommended one. And then I have Claude Code. If I hit click the setup wizard here, it's going to pop up, and this is where the little light bulb comes in. And so these providers that are selected, it says unchecked providers will be excluded from the agent recommendations. So I'm not going to use the Gemini CLI or the OpenAI API, but I'm going to use the Codex CLI because that's going to use my subscription. Same with the Cursor CLI, that's going to use my Cursor subscription, and the Claude Code is going to use the Claude Code subscription. So I'm just going to be using my subscription providers and hit apply here. Since I'm kind of a tinkerer and I want to play with this type of stuff, I'm just going to go ahead and start the wizard so that we can kind of walk through and see what we want to do here. So in terms of choosing the Oracle, pick the model that actually handles the best planning, review, and follow-up conversations. The Codex CLI is definitely the one that's recommended. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit apply next. For context building, looks like the two models we're going to use is the Codex CLI and then the GPT 5.3 Codex Medium. So that's just kind of saying like center this div. You don't need a really crazy big model. And this is kind of where the token savings comes from. And this is where we're going to hit apply next. And the chat model, so that it ain't available in settings and you can be re-enabled. So go ahead and apply next. And as far as the explore model, so we can use Claude Code or Sonnet for the actual exploration. And then this is going to be the pair. So it's like Codex CLI plus GPT 5.4 high. And then for design, it's going to use Claude Code or Claude Code's Opus latest model. So I just wanted to walk through this so I can see what was actually configured. If I hit next, we can see kind of what's all set up. So now if I wanted to have something different, for example, like I don't want to use Claude Sonnet to explore, and then I want to use something different, this is where I can hit configure. And then in the configure section, this is going to be where I'm going to be able to modify those sections. And that's going to be in the settings, and we can always change those later. But for the most part, we don't really have to touch very much. So here's all the recommended stuff. We're going to go ahead and go through, and we're pretty much done here. So I'm going to hit next, and we're all set. We can now just like open our folder for our app and go ahead and start working. So what I thought I would do is I'll take a look at my app called Kahunoa. And so this app goes out and makes a lot of calls to the internet, and we'll actually look up different things. And the goal of this is to actually have an agent that will go out and make phone calls as well and talk to the restaurant owners on my behalf. And it'll also look up reviews in different places to try to parse out some of the information. And so I can actually see the full research details, and it will be outlined here as well. This is not a complete app yet, and there's still some inefficiencies. And I thought this would be probably a perfect time for me to enter this into Repo Prompt, because there are some additional optimizations that I still want to make around like the end-to-end flow and some of the architecture here. So let me just go ahead and see if I can get that set up. So I'm going to go ahead and open folder here, and I'm going to select the project. So the ones that the one that I actually want to do is I'm going to do a refactor. And in the refactor here, it's just going to analyze the code structure and improve it with a guided pass. And in my case, what I'm just going to go ahead and do is just kind of paste in my prompt here. And so I'm just going to have it do an audit and let it go ahead and do some exploration. So in this type of thing, what I was saying earlier with my app, I want to see if there's any like data quality leaks. I want to see if like there's any wrong restaurant data. kind of like a verification step if there's any like mismatches and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure there's a whole bunch of that going on. So handing that off to an agent so that it can go start to do some of that research for me is going to be really, really cool here. So as we see, the first thing that's kicked off is the agent here. And we have this thing that Repo Prompt is already doing. It's called a scout. And so the scout has basically sent this request, and we're seeing it happen kind of right now in real time. So this is using Claude Code, and it's using Sonnet, and it's using the latest Sonnet model, and we're actually seeing the files that it's reading. So it's reading different files here, and it says, now let me check the results and actually check the flow here. And so this top level thing is a really nice UI experience. So this is the chat that we sent up, and you can see the refactor workflow kind of labeled right there. And the agent is already responding back to telling us, saying, okay, this is what I'm doing. And so you can see it's already done a file tree audit, and this is now kicked off 3 different runs. And so the second run here is basically taking a look with the Claude Code model. And it says, now let me read the EXA and browser use models to see how the queries are actually structured. So the agent itself is handing these queries off, and each of these have their own context window. And so if you notice that, like, especially this one, when it's using the Sonnet model down here, it says Sonnet latest. The second one is using Sonnet latest as well. Sonnet does not cost you that many tokens to use. So whenever you're using a Sonnet model, especially for exploration of file stuff, this is kind of one of the magics of Repo Prompt, because now it's using those on your behalf to accomplish your task. And because we're in this specific workflow for refactoring, now I can kind of really rely on it to do that type of thing. And so here it is coming back as well. This one's using the Claude Code Sonnet latest, and this came back with a bunch of relevant information. So the nice thing about this is that I didn't really have to touch anything. I didn't have to make these prompts or make them separate windows, and I could even see what files it's touched. So there's actually context, and it's telling me live it's used 49,000 tokens, out of the context window. And then we could even, if we wanted to export everything that happened here, we can just go ahead and export it. There's a lot of really cool stuff, but I really like this workflow that he's been able to organize and address. And if I just wanted to continue working in this specific subagent that is currently kicked off, I can continue to send my messages here. And so now the main agent has kicked back and says, cool, I've collapsed all of my search tasks. I'm going to continue to wait for the run here. As far as what's been happening in Repo Prompt, now we've been able to take advantage of basically using multiple models. All right, so the results have come back, and the results of this are quite amazing. And I love the detail that it's come back with. I'd say, let's go ahead and fix them all. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter. And so this is just the main chat. You can kind of see there's just one chat there. So what's cool about this is that we see it generating the concrete plan. And if you wanted it to, for example, instead of saying, let's go ahead and fix all top 5, what I could have done is just hit handoff to new chat. And in that new chat, we could have just selected a different workflow. But what's nice about the way that it's currently configured is that, Repo Prompt tries to make it easy so that you can just kind of really stay in all in one chat. And that way you're not fighting like context windows and trying to figure out, okay, wait, I had this chat over there. What do I need to bring over? It just can kind of stay contained in one. It just makes it really fluid. Can you imagine the workflows that are going to be going from here? The context builder has been going for a little over 10 minutes, and this plan is looking fire right now. And so what's cool about this is that I'm still hands off on this thing, right? I'm not even touching anything. So the plan has been exported and is now dispatching 2 engineer agents concurrently. This is probably the most exciting and cool part. And so you want to take a look at this window up here to the very top left where it says refactor handoff. You can see agent A and agent B kind of kick off here. And this is the models that they're running. So this one's using the GPT 5.3 Codex to take care of like this task. And you can even see the prompt that's sent over to the model, it's exposed right there. And this other one up here, you can see that the prompt that's handed off to this model. And this is also GPT 5.3 Codex. And it's pretty much getting to work for what it needs to do. So it's reading some of the files and taking care of those types of things. And so while that's going off, we can go back to the main chat here at the higher level, and we're seeing what's actually happening. So it's going to wait around less than 10 minutes or so for this task to kick off. And meanwhile, we've already used our Claude Code plan. We've already used our Codex plan in coordination here with everything that's going on. We've already had like a plan going on with the Oracle as well. And another thing that's really interesting is that the fact that I didn't have to write any specific skill files, which is kind of crazy, right? I normally would have to write skills for orchestration, skills to hand off. And all of this stuff was pretty much done inside. So as we can see here, the first item of this 5-item plan is now complete, and it's going to continue going through the rest of the plan. If we click the 15 files here, we've only used 110 tokens out of the million token context window. And it's just going to continue on and launch more subagents for those tasks to be done. And this is part of the reason why Eric is able to save a lot of tokens for us, is because when you launch subagents and you use different models, especially Codex and other things, you're not going to hit your rate limits as fast if you're normally just sticking to one model and trying to spam everything across. So yeah, this is kind of why I was asking, how come no one's talking about this app? Everything we just did is running on the subscriptions that I already had. That's Claude Code and Codex. And we actually have agents talking to each other, handing off, and I actually didn't have to write any skill files. This is so crazy. And it's a lot of overhead that you didn't normally have to deal with if you're trying to write your own agents and do your own types of frameworks. And there's kind of one more piece to this that I didn't get into today, but it's probably the coolest part of this whole thing, and I'm going to save that for the next video.